In the town of Colchester, Virginia, is a bridge called the Colchester Overpass. It is now known as Bunnyman Bridge. According to the legend, on Halloween night at midnight, if you stand by the bridge, you will see a bright light under the bridge, and the ghost of Bunnyman will appear. So where did the Bunnyman legend come from? The tale of the Bunnyman started with a series of unsolved, brutal murders that originated with an insane asylum that existed buried in the wilderness of Clifton, Virginia in the early 1900s. More and more people were beginning to move to the town where the asylum was. The townspeople started complaining. They didn't like living so close to an asylum, so they made up excuses as for why the asylum should be moved. They said they were worried the asylum patients would escape and ramshackle the town. Even though nothing like this had ever happened before, the mayor caved and instructed the head of the asylum to move the people somewhere else to appease the townspeople. Moving an entire asylum worth of patients was not an easy task, but they started the process. That autumn, they started moving the most dangerous patients to Lorton Prison. It is said sometime during the journey to Lorton Prison, the driver of one of the vehicles violently swerved and the transport careened off the road, crashing into the dark wilderness. Most of the inmates aboard, including the driver, were killed in the crash, but some survived and escaped into the surrounding landscape, vanishing into the black of night. The next day, the police were hard at work, scouring the area to hunt down the escaped mental patients. After an exhaustive and intensive manhunt that lasted months, the authorities were able to give an account for all but 2 convicts that escaped: a Marcus A. Walster and Douglas J. Griffin. As the police were searching near the overpass of Colchester Road Bridge one day, they came upon a strange area in the woods. It smelled awful, and all around they could see skinned dead rabbits hanging from the trees. But they didn't find any person there. Whether this was the work of a patient or not, something was not right. The find was reported, and the area was marked as a place to be more thoroughly searched. A few days later, the skinned body of a man was found hanging from a tree, like the rabbits. The man was later identified as Marcus Walster, one of the lost asylum patients. Douglas J. Griffin, being the other escapee, immediately became the authorities' prime suspect. There were reports of a man wandering the woods, wearing the skins of rabbits and carrying a hatchet. Police believed this was Douglas and took inventory of any and all sightings of this man. One day, the officers were closer than they realized. Douglas saw them first and took off running. They chased him up the train tracks, over the bridge. There was a train heading down the tracks in their direction. Douglas, the Bunnyman, stood on the tracks and was hit and killed by the train. Another version of the urban legend says that a patient escaped from a local asylum and hid in the woods around the bridge in Clifton, Virginia. He was driven insane by the murders of his wife and daughter. It's unknown if he was responsible for their murders, but that was the reason for him being in the asylum. While authorities were out looking for him, they found the remains of small animals in the woods near the bridge. Most of the remains were of rabbits. They figured he was eating the rabbits and other animals to survive. Despite an extensive search, they were unable to find the escaped patient. Months later, strange rumors started circulating about a man, covered in blood, standing by the bridge, holding a dead rabbit and a hatchet. Later on, people began reporting that he, himself, was dressed as a bunny. Years later, on a Halloween night, a few teenagers were hanging out by the bridge around midnight, and they were confronted by the crazy man. He murdered them all by slitting their throats and draining them of their blood. He hung their dead bodies inside the bridge, just like they were rabbits. When the teens were found, investigators found rabbits hanging beside them. Then, on the next Halloween, the Bunnyman allegedly struck again. This time, 4 teens were said to be partying under the bridge, while one, a young woman named Adrian Hatala, was still spooked by the stories and kept her distance. According to Adrian, there was a dim light that approached the bridge, followed by a blindingly bright flash of light emanating from under it at around midnight. When it happened, she could hear the anguished screams of her companions echoing towards her through the chilly night air. Terrified, she ran and hid. When the screaming stopped, she cautiously went over to investigate. She found the bodies of all her friends hanging under the bridge, mutilated in a manner similar to the teens that had been found the previous Halloween. According to the story, she would eventually be charged with the murders and locked away in a mental institution. The murders continued happening. The bodies of several teenagers were allegedly found hanging under the bridge, murdered and mutilated in the same brutal manner. No one that has actually seen the Bunnyman face to face has ever survived to tell the tale. Only police and some of the murder victims' friends and family have survived, but people have said their cars were hit by an axe that was flung into their windshields. One of the strangest happenings surrounding Bunnyman Bridge are phone calls that were allegedly made to a nearby police station from the Bunnyman. It's said the police station received a phone call where the Bunnyman said, "You have been messing up my property by dumping tree stumps, limbs, and brush, and other things on the property. You can make everything right by meeting me tonight and talking about the situation." The police took this call seriously and investigated it fully. Even if it wasn't the Bunnyman, they couldn't have someone calling them up, accusing them, and demanding meetings at night with them. But nothing was ever found. The police released this statement. After a very extensive investigation into this and all other cases of this same nature, it is still unsubstantiated as to whether or not there really was a man dressed as a rabbit. The only people who have seen this so-called rabbit man have been children of rather young ages, and the complainant in this case. Upon interviewing everyone in this case that may have had any knowledge of any incidents concerning a rabbit, there has been no significant information uncovered that would lead to the identity of the person or persons that were posing as a rabbit. This case will be marked as inactive. Recently, on April 18, 2018, in Fairfax County, Virginia, the body of a man was found near the Bunnyman Bridge. It was the body of Michael Cooker, who was 30 years old, from the town of Herndon. The body of Michael was found a little before 7 a.m. by a resident that lived in the area. He was found approximately 900 feet from the bridge, on the side of the road. Michael had no weapons on him and appeared to have been murdered. Police said he suffered upper body trauma, but would not specify the cause of death. They were also not sure if he had been killed there or had been dumped there after being murdered. They say there is no threat to locals in the area, and would like to assure everyone that the murder is not in any way connected to the Bunnyman legend.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video on the Bunnyman legend, you need to watch the previous Bunnyman video talking about the real-life newspaper articles written about the Bunnyman sightings that happened in the 70s. Or you might enjoy the very creepy legend of the Dead Children's Playground.